How about using the elements from Subbox 6 to make some great scrapbooking pages? And it's very easy to do with the elements that you've got there. This is a 12 by 12 size, so all I've done is add one sheet of 12 by 12. All the other cardstock, stamps are all out of the box. So let me show you how you can do this quite easily onto an 8 by 8 size. This is the size you're going to get in the box. So this is our watercolour card that comes in the box, and all I've done is I've trimmed this down to 7 3/4 inches by 7 3/4 inches. So this is our white watercolour card. I've then got a piece of the coloured cardstock that comes in the box. So this is your 8 inches by 8 inches. And I've stuck a beautiful picture on here of Sarah and her family having a lovely relaxing Sunday afternoon. And then what I've done is, it's called gutting, and I've just gone in with a craft knife about 1/2 inch in on all of the 4 sides. So that means then I'm not wasting the cardstock. I can use this cardstock to make a colour frame. So that is going to be the base, and then my watercolour card is going to go on the top of there. Okay, so I'm going to bring my guillotine in. So I've stuck this on with some of the all-purpose Cal glue, and then to trim this down, because I want to have some of that blue showing as well, so I'm just lining it up in my guillotine, so I've got some of that lovely blue cardstock showing as well. Okay, so I'm just going to trim that up nicely. Perfect to do in the guillotine. So just lining that up so you've got that lovely gap all the way round. And then if you feel you don't want to have quite a big gap as that, you can quite easily trim a bit more off. And in fact, on that side I think I'm going to take just a little bit more off. And that's the great thing with the guillotine, you can take just that little fraction off if you wish. So I think that's about right. So that's my photograph ready to go on my layout. I'm going to keep these to one side because I can use these for future projects to die cut letters or anything else out, so I won't be throwing those away. And then I've taken some more of the watercolour card. I've got 3 sheets here, and these are measuring 6 inches by 4 inches. So I've got 3 of those, and we're going to put some techniques on those. So let's pop those to one side for a moment, and I want to work on the back of here first. So I've got my cardstock, so I want to take a bit of that whiteness off there. So I've just got a pot of water here, and I've got my stamps, and I think I'm going to bring in some of these stamps here. I'm going to bring in this lovely corner one. I think I'm going to use that. So let's pop that onto my rocker block, because you can use your pens to stamp with as well. So by using the fat end of your pen, if you just lay it on the side, you can get a nice good coverage on your stamp. Okay, it's not damaging the nib by doing it on the side. If I went in like that, it would do more damage, but by just stroking it across, I can then use my pens as ink pads to stamp with. So I'm doing this all one colour, but again you could quite easily do this with multiple colours. And I'm just going to go into the corner and make a nice corner stamped image. And look at that beautiful image. I'm going to do another one at the top as well. So back in again, just really quickly. So even though these are a watercolour product, shows that we can stamp with them. So that's one of the extra techniques that you can do with these. So let's put one in the opposite corner to balance out the page, and just with our rocker block, that's it, just beautifully done. Now just have a little bit of time just to set, and what you could do is you could even go in with your paintbrush, which I might do, and just drag the colour out on the large flower here, I'm just taking the colour from the edge of the stamped image to turn that blue. So I can just gently make my blue flowers blue, so they haven't got to look quite so plain. But I think the stamped image with these pens is a lovely technique. Not using too much water because I don't want to disturb the rest of the stamped image. Okay, so that's another technique you can do, which is dragging out your colour. And this is where you've just got to walk away from it, Dawn, and stop. Keep adding bits. That's enough as what I want on there. Right, I'm going to move my image, my photograph to one side to take a little bit more of this whiteness off, because the camera's probably dancing around with all this white cardstock. I'm going to pop a little bit of pen just on my mat. If I bring this down a little bit, you'll be able to see a bit better. So I'm putting a little bit of pen on there, and then taking some water, picking up that colour and just doing some little flicks just to add a little bit more interest to the back of the page, and it takes that just white look off the back of the page. And this is where you can add as much or as little as you like, bearing in mind we are putting bits in the middle here, so I'm trying to concentrate on just getting it round these edges, which I think is going quite nicely. And I think I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow as well, just to add a little bit more interest. This is where you can really have fun with your markers. So don't just think of them for colouring. Okay, just have a little bit of fun with them. So let's put a bit of yellow. Yes, that works nicely on there, that yellow. Okay, which reminds me of being back at school, this does. But just a great technique to do. I'm just going to add a little bit more in that corner just to balance that out. That's lovely. So we've done like a flicking technique there on the background, and stamping and dragging that colour out. So I'm going to pop that to one side just to dry off, and what I'm going to do next is we're going to do the lettering. So the words that you've got in your kit, if I bring the one I've picked in here, I've picked Smile. I think that goes perfectly with the picture, and I want to do a little ombre effect on here. So I've got my blue pen again, because I've got blue around the edge of my page. I'm sticking with the blue, and I'm just going to go straight in with the brush end of my pen. Now I could triple colour this if I wanted. In fact, I might gradient up and add a little bit of yellow at the top. We will see. I'm going to pop a little bit on there. Going with my brush again and just drag some of that colour across. Okay, so this will just give you a lovely soft ombre look, so not too heavy. The things don't always have to be heavy. We were dealing with watercolour card here. I need a little bit more water on there, so just dragging that colour out. So these die cut words are perfect, and also don't forget, once you've used the words, you can use the outside of the words as stencils as well. So don't forget about using those, because you can use them as stencils as well. So I'm just going to bring a bit more blue in so this shows out on my page. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to pop that again to one side to dry off. So let me pop that over there to dry, and then let's look at doing some techniques on here. So the first technique I want to do is I've got my watercolour card, and we're working on the side that's slightly textured, not the smooth side, the side that's slightly textured on here. So I'm going to do a salt technique, which is something we always love to do, and when I'm going to do this I tend to do it in batches so I can let it dry naturally overnight. So I'm putting just lots of squibble of the colours from the collection on my glass mat. Okay, and I'm going to put a little bit of that blue in there as well. Okay, there we go. So just a bit of all the colours on there. Right, and then I've got my water spritzer. Okay, and just spritz with lots of water. And I'm actually going to spritz my cardstock as well to really get it moving. And I'm going to lay that on and then just press it down and just let it soak in. Now when you're doing the salt technique, I personally like to use just some rock salt because you've got a nicer, it's quite chunky and crystallised. It gives you a great technique. And then if we lift that up, okay, and then get your salt, sprinkle it on. Now this is where you can put on as much or as little as you actually like. Okay, the choice is yours. Personally, I think the more you put on the better, because what happens is the salt is going to soak up the colour, but it's going to leave crystal effect on the background. At this stage I will go in and add some more water, because the more water you add in, the more it's going to soak into your paper. And then this is where you need to lay it on your craft sheet, or I'm just going to pop it on a bit of kitchen roll, leave that to dry for 24 hours or just under. Okay, it does need to dry naturally, it's nothing you can force dry with a heat gun, it just doesn't work. The crystal of the salt just needs time to take in. Now in good fashion, I've got one here that I did last night, and I've started to rub the salt away. So all you do afterwards is some will come off quite naturally, and then just rub away the salt with your fingers, your thumb. Okay, and it's got a lovely texture. So if you're giving, say, a card to somebody who's visually impaired, this is a lovely technique because they can actually feel the texture of the paper. Now this is where, again, it's up to you how much you rub off and how much you don't. And I don't know whether the camera will quite pick it up because the colours are quite soft, but your salt takes on the colour of the pens that you've used. Now I don't throw this away. This is what I would use to put in my shaker cards or stick onto mixed media projects, okay, because it's got that lovely colour there and it's a bit of a shame to spoil it. So there, if I bring that up, you might be able to just see all those lovely, it looks like sort of corally sort of texture because it's soaked right into the paper and taken that colour off. So let me fold this up and pop this to one side, and I'll show you what we're going to do just to add a little bit more interest onto here. Okay, I'm just finding my glycerin. In fact, yeah, I will add a little bit of glycerin. So I've got some little bit of glycerin here, and I'm going to pop just the tiniest amount. This is just glycerin you pick up from the chemist, okay, nothing overly special. And I'm going to do, let's go in with the pink this time. Nice blob of pink. Got my ink pads with my sponge, and what you need to do is pick up the glycerin first and really work it in to your ink pad, and then pick up your colour. And then what I wanted to do is just put a bit of colour just around the edge, just to finish that panel off. So what I'm doing is I'm going to decorate the 3 panels that we cut up in different cardstock, in different textures. So that's panel 1. That's going to be a lovely salt technique. So that's going to be set aside now. That's all finished. Now the next panel I've done, let's just mop that to one side. I've got my cardstock, and again I've picked out these lovely stamps that come in your box. So this time I'm going to use the word stamp. Now because my title is Smile, I've picked out my word Smile, and I'm going to do some heat embossing and a resist technique. So I've already started. Okay, so just going in with my watermark ink pad and just rocking that on. And what I'm doing is I'm doing it like building bricks. I'm doing it alternate. So I'm covering the whole of the back of the page so I can heat emboss this. Okay, and we'll do a resist technique on there. So bringing my, and I'm using white embossing powder for this. So let me just pop the lid on that so I don't get any powder on my ink pad. So I'm just using some white embossing powder. Sprinkle that on. Okay, so that gives that there. And then we'll just heat emboss that quickly. I'll just pop this to one side so it doesn't go everywhere, and I'll just heat emboss that, and then I will show you how we're going to do a little resist technique on there. Okay, so that's my lovely Smile stamp. So let's pop that back, give that a little clean. Okay, so that's using my watermark, and then this time I think I'm going to go in with a bit of the, go back in with a bit of that pink, and I think I'm going to go in with some of this yellow. Okay, I need another ink pad for my yellow. Let me get another one here. I've got some new ones here. Now if you're using glycerin, please do not then put your glycerin directly back onto one of your ink pads. I always keep mine in a separate pot. Or another good habit is to get into washing them when you've finished. So going in with a bit of glycerin on my ink pad, picking up that colour, and then I'm just going to do a resist technique. So I'm just going in randomly with the colour here, just to add a little bit of difference to the background. Then take that one off, pop a new one on here, work that glycerin in, pick up that yellow. Oh, look at that, look, doesn't it look stunning? But can you see how it's resisting the white embossing powder? It's showing that word Smile through, which is just what I wanted it to do. In fact, I'm going to put a little bit more yellow there. I'm just going to put it up here so it's not near where I've put my glycerin already. So I want a bit of a stronger yellow down here. So you can just, this is where you can play, and if you merge the two colours over, you'll see you start to get an orange colour coming through, which is nice. So that's a resist technique. So just showing, even with your scrapbook pages, if you've just got plain white cardstock or watercolour cardstock, how easily you can turn plain cardstock into pattern cardstock that you can use for your scrapbooking. Isn't it just fabulous? So I think you'll agree that would make a great background for a card. You know, you could just have a card there, matte and layer that, pop your word on, you're ready to go. What a really quick and simple card. But we're going to put it on our scrapbook page. So I'm going to pop that to one side. In fact, I'm going to just get my pink again and just do my edges. I don't know whether it's going to take as I want it to take. I'm going to pick it up and I'm just going to take that white look off from around the edges of my project. I'm happy with that now, so that can go to one side to dry. So let me just wipe up where we've had the glycerin, and then we'll do another technique on the last panel. So let's have a look at this last panel here. So I've got the last panel, I've got the texture side up again. Okay, let's go in with some blue this time. So make sure that's dry. So I've got some blue on there, and I'm just wondering whether to do a gradual colour wash. Yeah, let's do a gradual colour wash. So let's bring that colour in. I think I need a bit more blue. My blue looks a bit like it's faded out there. Right, okay, so I'm going to go in this time with my big brush, okay, because this is going to be a colour wash. So you always get your big brush for this, nice and wet, pick up your colour and do sweeping motions across your cardstock. It's not quite wet enough. Okay, so this is going to give you a gradual wash of colour, and it's those big sweeping movements that you want, so don't be afraid about that. And the thing is, we're using watercolour card here, and because we're using watercolour cards, it can take the amount of water that we're actually going to pop on. So let me do a bit down here in the blue. Okay, and I think I'm going to go in with some yellow in the middle, because I can, and because we got 3 pens in our box, why not? So if I just dry off the water from there, because it's going to be a bit wet to put my pen, I might have to put it over here, squiggle with my yellow, big brush, pick up that yellow. Oh yes, so I've just done a very simple colour wash in stripes across the page. So let's take this a little bit further. So let me just give it a little quick dry. Alright, so that's a little top tip. It's not totally dry, but that's dry enough for what I want to do next. Now this time I want to try some different techniques on here. We're going to do some faux bleach, and I've got another clean, this is a new clean pad at my pot, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz some water on here, and I'm going to soak up that water with the ink pad, giving it a big soak up. That's it, getting all that water in the ink pad, and then just go directly onto your cardstock and just hold it for a couple of seconds, and then lift it off, and then go back in and get some more water and hold it onto your cardstock. I'm not moving this around, I'm just holding it really still. Okay, because this is doing a faux bleached effect, but I'm doing more of a random pattern by using my sponge. Now you could do your faux bleach effect through a stencil, you could do your faux bleach effect with the splatter from your brushes, so there's lots of ways you can do the faux bleach effect. So I'm just going to do a few of these circles because I think these look really nice, and I might just have to put a little bit more water on my mat. Just really quick and easy to do. And I haven't dabbed anything dry yet, I'm just leaving it because the longer you leave it, the more it's actually going in to the cardstock. Okay, that's given a nice background effect there. So that's where your watercolour pens come into their own, because there is just so much you can do with these. Don't also be afraid to go off the page. So like here I've got a gap, let's do a half circle. It's not going to matter whatsoever. And I can see a little gap up in that corner, and I'm going to do the same thing up there. Now you might already see how the water is starting to react to the background. Piece of plain kitchen paper, lay it on the top and just with your hand just smoothly, I'm just rubbing that down. I'm not scrubbing, I'm just doing a nice smooth movement with my hand so that colour's taking off. Now look at that. You've got a lovely dotty background quite simply just by using the tools that you've already got on your craft desk. So that is absolutely perfect. So I'm going to give all this a blast and get it dry, and then we can come back and assemble our scrapbook page. I'm starting to build my page up, so I'm just using some of the all-purpose to put round my frame that we gutted to make the picture mount for our photograph. And now I'm going to add my white cardstock. By using the all-purpose, it means I have got a little bit of wiggle room as well. Okay, so just pushing that out so the glue disperses, and just make sure none's come out in the back. No, that's fine. So what I decided to do with this was I've got a flower in this bottom left hand corner and the top right hand corner. Okay, so now let's start adding our layers, and I think I'm going to put my smile embossed one first, and then the salt technique, and then I've got my faux bleach technique, and I'm going to fan them out so they sort of sit nicely on the page. So let's go down with this one first. So all purpose again. Now you will notice, because we've done techniques on these with water, they may want to curl a bit, so you might just have to glue down and weigh them down a bit as you go. So I'm just going to pop that one there. That's why I'll put plenty of glue, and then just make sure that glue is dispersed. And then we're going to pop that one next. I'm just positioning where I'm putting my other one, and don't be afraid to do this, okay? Just take your time to position where you want everything, so you know your composition of your scrapbook page is how you want it to be. So I think that's about right there. So let's now, so that one's going to go there, so I've got a little triangle down here and a little triangle up there. Okay, so just flattening out my paper, lots of the all-purpose again, because if it comes out I can wipe it clear, but also I've got that manoeuvrability with it, and it will set like concrete once it's dry. Okay, in a fashion I'm saying like concrete, but it does set really well. So I've got my corner there and my corner there. Okay, and by having that splattering at the background, it does just take the whiteness off the background of the cardstock that we've got there. And last but not least, the faux bleached one, which I think I'm going to bring up about there. Yep. So again, plenty of glue. Okay, so far nothing has seeped out, and I'd rather have too much and it lays nice and flat than in a short while all the pages start curling. So you can see we're getting the effect of all the layers coming together. But it's quite nice to see that from your sub box, I know there's a lot of you that scrapbook out there, you can quite easily do scrapbook layouts with your sub box. I'm just going to turn this over and give it a really good burnish with my hand, just to help flatten it all out. Let's see how that's looking now. That's good. Now I've got my star piece, which is my photograph, which I'm going to pop just there. I'll put some 3D foam pads on the back of this just to lift it away from the page a bit. You could quite easily use your silicone gel, as well, your 3D gel, but I'm using just some foam pads today. Okay, so I'm going to then position that exactly where I want that to be, which is about there. I've done a little tag with some journaling on, just stating what the occasion was all about, so that can pop in the top there. I've got my word to go on here, and I'm going to put this at a slight angle. So what I've done is I've put some little foam pads on the bottom, because obviously this is set on foam pads, so it's going to be risen. And then I'm going to use my tacky glue for the top so it can stick over the photograph. And don't be afraid to put words over your photographs, it's, you know, no problem at all. And the nice thing now with the digital age, if we do make a mess up, we can just print it off again. So don't be afraid of that. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of glue just on the back of my hand there. I'm just going to dab the top part of the word on there. There we go. Now I'm going to pop that just to an angle, so it just sits nicely on the photograph, but then it's coming off on the raised ink pads there. Okay, and then I think to finish off this corner, what I did was, out of collection again, I've just coloured some of these the lovely flowers that you've got in your kit, and stamped over them. And I'm just wondering if I just put just a few in that corner with some 3D glue. So I've got my syringe here, so in fact I might just go for just all the little ones, just so it's not too overpowering, because I think there's quite enough on that page. Yes, I'm just going to use the little ones. So a little bit of the 3D glue gel. Okay, I've just shaped these with my flower tool as well, just to add a bit more interest to them. And I'm doing rule of threes, like floristry, that if you have things in rules of threes, they're more pleasing to the eye. And then I'm just going to poke a little flower leaf under there, and just poke one under there. Now the leaves I've coloured by, I mixed a bit of the blue with a bit of the yellow to make my green, and I've probably lost it now. I did just a colour wash over some of the scrap card that I had left, and then from that I then stamped over and then did my little leaves. So there we go. I think that's just about it. I'm not going to put anything else on there. I don't think it needs anything else at all. But just shows you, from your subscription books or box, you can quite easily pop together a simple scrapbook layout. Now that's not using any pattern papers, that's just using the watercolour card and some of the colour card. We've used the die cut letters, the stamps I've fussy cut out there. All I've added is a bit of ribbon and a beautiful scrapbook layout. And then if you want to add yourself a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock in, you can quite easily upgrade that and do bigger scrapbook pages. So I hope you enjoy having a go at doing some scrapbooking with your subscription box 6, and use your watercolour pens. It's just a different way of using them to create something perfect to keep.